We are back. It is off-season Trinity Tuesdays, and this week, for those that missed it, we're going division by division, team by team. Back with Ray. I'm excited for this. We're going to be talking some Ray's Dallas Cowboys, a couple teams that have new offensive coordinators or no offensive coordinators. Ray, we're talking the NFC East here in the second week. We did the NFC North last week. This week, we're using the new Trinity tool, ddfantasyfootball.com. If you're not already in there, get access to it along with our Discord. If you're watching this early, you're already a member on YouTube. But if not, still tap into the community, become a member of the website. This is the stuff we're talking about 24/7, 365 in there. But Ray, how you doing? Talking your Dallas Cowboys this week.
Yeah, man. We're all doing the same thing right now, trying to react and guesstimate and project and predict how all the coaching changes are going to impact these situations. You know, there's a lot of talk, Scott, about this position in particular. Roster construction series, you've talked about it for years. You and I have discussed it privately inside of our community, but it seems like the conversation around non-elite wide receivers is starting to catch fire across the fantasy football space, in particular Dynasty fantasy football. So yeah, anytime that we get to do this and talk through usage and hit on some of the things that are burning questions for folks, I love it. And then when you got something that you truly believe in, like the Trinity, and what it does and what it does not do, it makes having this type of conversation really fun. It makes the exercise important because, Scott, there are only so many starting quarterbacks in a league, but for most of us, I mean, you're starting at minimum 2 receivers, a flex or 2. So those are the positions that are being utilized week in and week out. Yet it is very tough to pick and discern which ones you want from team to team, week to week. It's a tough position, but maybe an easy position as well. So we're going to talk about it in the way that we do. We trust the Trinity. We follow the dots. We trust the usage, and then we talk through, basic principles with construction and moves to make. And the NFC East, we got a lot to talk about in this division right here, Scott.
Yeah, and we're going to go through team by team. We're going to talk about the environment. We're going to talk about the current players that are on the roster, teams that have players leaving in free agency, maybe some new coordinators or new head coaches. We're just kind of go through organically and sprinkled in. I think what's cool, we did this in the first episode. For those that didn't watch it, go back and watch it because all of these are going to be evergreen shows.
Yeah.
Ray and I are learning the new tool on the fly too about how to take some of the data and go, ooh, I can actually use that to maybe go figure out this. Or, we're going to be kind of going through it and figuring stuff out as we're going through.
Yeah.
So It isn't going to be, this is not the show where it's like the intro 101 to the Trinity, right?
No.
But we're going to work in things that we're spotting because there's so much more you can do with the new tool. There's going to be things that you and I are like, ooh, maybe that's something we can do separately and figure out, how to come up with this or how to work this into that analysis. So that's how we're going to go through these team by team, talk through the situations, free agents, etc. So what team you want to start with? I guess pull up the whole division.
Yeah, let's pull it up.
Just look at it.
Tripping, my bad. Let's pull it up. ddfantasyfootball.com. Here it is, and we are going NFC East. So that is my Dallas Cowboys. Let's get them on the screen. We've got those stinky Giants. Let's get them up there. New head coach Harbaugh. We could talk about that. At the Eagles, Scott, nobody wants to run this offense, so we will discuss that. And then who do we have? The old Commanders. The old Commanders. And there is the East. And let's make this a little easier for people to read, Scott, because we can put the labels on. And we'll just go labels with no headshots right now. So here's the East right here. We'll put the headshots on. People like the headshots. There we go. Not Seattle. Sorry. What is it? Did I put I saw JSN there. What the hell are we doing? There we go. There's the East. There's the East, and we can expand this. Full screen, Scott. Talk about it.
So just looking at the 4 teams, and something that we're going to say on probably every show, that each team's environment is different, and you can't just compare player to player. So you see 4 different teams on here with smattering of players in different ranges. We
Mm-hmm.
got tight ends and we got receivers on here, but you can't compare Darius Slayton to somebody else. I don't know, Deebo Samuel. They're in different environments. They play different roles. So I think it's important to look at each one individually, team by team. But then you can also kind of look at, what's the projected usage of those players. And like last week, we went through pretty much everybody's wide receiver 2. Remember the conversation about J-Mo and Christian Watson and Jordan Addison and Luther Burden and Roma Dunze. And it's like, okay, if you kind of assume that all of these guys are going to be the second option on their team, then you're really comparing their environments. And then you can maybe start looking at their score. But it's important to kind of figure out what that hierarchy looks like. So that's something that we're going to talk about here to start. So what's the first thing I wanted to ask you was just looking at the 4 teams. What would you guess was the level of quarterback play quality in this division, Ray? In terms of not team or just quarterback passing quality in this division. What jumps out to you?
It looks like right off the rip without looking at anything, while the productions, like Dallas was absolutely the best environment. It's very easy to spot that, right? And maybe if you I don't know if the dots
remove
make it any
humor me, because Dallas was a top 3 environment. Remove Dallas, and then let's just take a look at what it looks
all right. Well, here we go. Let's get Dallas off the screen. Not great. Damn near everybody's below the regression line. Damn near everybody. You've got, 3 players above just average, above baseline per how they were used. We can debate why they were used that way. They weren't used as much as I wanted to, this or that. But based on the rest of the data set, the rest of the NFL, and players who are utilized like A.J. Brown, like Wandale, Neighbors is a little skewed because he didn't play much, torn ACL. Terry McLaurin, like that's the first thing that jumps off to me. 7.76 usage score for Terry McLaurin. This is a great Trinity score. It's within your kind of higher end wide receiver ones. It's not elite usage, but this is for the team. What Terry McLaurin was asked to do when he was on the field, the usage was great, but the quarterback play, it looks like where George Pickens lived for 3 years in Pittsburgh. Devontae Smith, I don't know how much further off Smitty's usage, a.k.a. his score, is this year opposed to last year or the year before. He wasn't living in the 7.5 range, so his usage is probably close to what it has been per that team, but below expectation. Dallas Goedert had a good year. He's above the line. Tight end, we take him off. A.J. Brown, despite the usage, despite everything that happened, he's sitting above that line. So for other players who did as much stuff as him, he's like right at baseline level, right at median level right there. But overall, I mean, people pumping up that Treylon Burks, you're looking at it like, I don't know if I want any of these guys back here, Scott. Like this, anything below like a 3-man, 4, 5, I always say 5 is where you want your guys at. Anything below that, you really got to tell yourself a story. But by and large, quarterback play probably not great in the NFC East in 2025.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the takeaway is when you pull up an entire team and you see everybody at the line or below it, and then you see the usage where all 3 of these teams that we have on the screen, I guess you can count the Giants in there as having 4, but they all have pretty decent concentration too. If you just look at the scores, I mean, they have like 3 guys that are clear as day, the relevant ones in the offense. So it's not a concentration problem. It's not they're throwing to 7 different guys and it's not clear what the pecking order is. But then you just look at of that group, because that's where most of the fantasy decisions are coming, right? In the wide receiver 2, 3, wide receiver 1, right below that range. Yep. That's where a lot of the flex decisions and how do I value this player in dynasty decisions are coming. Almost all of those guys are below the line.
Yes.
So that kind of reflects to me that, and it backs it up, that Cowboys were the 3rd best environment. And I have my own proprietary environment score. The Cowboys were 3rd in the league, Ray. The Giants, Eagles, and Commanders were all outside the top 15. Now, they weren't awful. Like, we're not talking that this is the Browns and the Jets and the Titans and the Ravens. but they were average, right? And the concentration, I think, saves that a little bit. What doesn't help that is, you know what's interesting about all three of these teams? All three of them were top 8 in the league in average depth of target.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're throwing, they're trying to hit downfield big plays, which that helps the Trinity, right? That's part of the Trinity score.
Yes.
But everything else, when you're just looking at passing rates, plays per game, quarterback efficiency, they're all average or below average for all three teams. So assuming those are true, like my takeaway is all three of these teams, not named Dallas, they need better quarterback play. They don't need more volume. They don't need, maybe they can quarterback play is be get by having a different coordinator, but I don't think they need a different approach. They simply just need better quarterback play.
Yes.
They need better bang for their buck when they do throw, because I think we've seen enough from the Eagles especially. Like, they're not going to change their stripes. They're not going to be top 5 in the league in pass rate.
Nope.
But you just need the efficiency to be better. When they throw, they need to connect more often. They can't have drops. They can't have games where, they can't move the ball for an entire half. So that's my takeaway is these three, there's room for environmental improvement for these three teams. The key is when we go through each roster, does their efficiency stay the same? And
right.
It does, maybe it doesn't. But where do you want to start? I kind of want to start with Dallas.
Okay, let's start with Dallas. I like starting with the report, so we can go back to the line, but I really like just sort of looking at how things ended up for the Dallas Cowboys here. So right here on the Trinity Score report, and I always use this, you could see sort of just a snapshot of their overall profile from this season. You see from the Dallas Cowboys, even though George Pickens led them in fantasy points, CeeDee Lamb, the games that he was on the field, when he was on the field, and he didn't play as much as Pickens, he actually led them in overall usage. It's not by much, but you could see Lamb's got a little higher yards per route run. He didn't score as many touchdowns, 3-9, didn't have as many receptions, but the target share a little bit higher for CeeDee Lamb. Look at the red zone targets. Despite the fact that CeeDee Lamb played less, he's only had 2 fewer red zone targets than George Pickens. And the air yard quality, air yard share for Pickens, 944. You think about him being that big play, the only guy down the field. But CeeDee Lamb was also an air yard merchant as well. So those two guys, your kind of top 2 guys from the Dallas Cowboys. Clear cut, 7-5, damn near 7-5. And then after that, Scott, it's, you're in that purple band is that kind of wide receiver 3 band. You've got Jake Ferguson, which is fine for a tight end, 11, 12 points per game. You're good at that. And then you've got Turpin, Ryan Flournoy, very low score, but it's, 8% target share. We reduced this down to maybe the back half of the season, and it looks different. Jalen Tolbert, Luke Schoonmaker, and Brevin Spann-Ford. But here's Dallas for the full year, and we can go look at them on the chart, and then you'll see, how that kind of plays out. But yeah, I mean, everybody was good. This lets me know that even all the way down here to Ryan Flournoy and his low kind of output as far as his raw usage and what he did, he's above the line. Turpin's right there at the line. Not that he's a fantasy viable asset. Look how much higher Jake Ferguson is. That's why it always felt like he was outproducing what you were actually getting from him on the field. His usage mattered, right? Even though it wasn't a bunch, it was very, very beneficial from a fantasy perspective. And then you've got the 2 big dogs at the top. Pickens, even though a slightly lower score, higher production, but this is just a great environment right here in Dallas.
Yeah, it's definitely a great environment. Jalen Tolbert is a free agent. And so you kind of look at, my takeaway is that you have Lamb and Pickens. I know I've talked a lot about the Pickens situation and how it could get ugly. We don't know that yet. That's a different conversation. But if you're willing to bet on Pickens and Dallas working it out, even if they don't right away, he's going to be on the team. There's no way he just hits free agency. You know what I mean? He's either getting tagged or extended, but he's going to be back. But this is actually almost an optimal environment. And the reason is it's very concentrated. It's 11.7 points for Ferguson, but, do the adjustment if you're in a 1.75 premium or whatever. Like, Ferguson's still a flex viable tight end.
Hell
easily.
Yeah.
Top 10 tight end overall and flex viable if the premium is high enough. And then with Pickens and Lamb, you can argue semantics as to who you prefer. Pickens is a little younger. Lamb has a little better track record. Lamb doesn't have the contract stuff, but Pickens outperformed Lamb last year. They're probably both top 12, top 15, okay? Because the environment's good. The concentration is perfect. Probably, I bet neither one of them is top 5 if both of them are on the field all the time and they're both healthy, right? But the beauty is there's going to be games where one is out or one gets banged up, and then the other one can go absolutely in nuclear because the environment can lift all boats. Like it can lift 2 or 3 players per game. So you have the two. You can debate who you like. I kind of like Pickens better if he's a little cheaper because I think he's got a shot to just continue to pace or outproduce Lamb and probably have even more volatility in terms of high-end volatility. And then we can look at it later on in the year too, but Flournoy has a low Trinity score, but like I kind of feel he's one of those guys where you purposely have him on your roster for one reason, is you wait till one of the other two is out, and that's when you use him. It's like a backup running back that gets 2 carries when the starter's not playing. So think of like the plotting third string backup, right? That is the plotter, right? But unless the other plotter ahead of him isn't playing, then he's not going to get a lot of work. But if he is unavailable, the plotter automatically gets more work than the handcuff that's always been the number 2. That's kind of how I look at Flournoy. Like,
look at him here.
Pickens or Lamb is out, he's right up there with Ferguson or higher in terms of my confidence in starting him because of the environment. Yes.
Well, this is 9 through. So I didn't segment it down to find the weeks in which he played and blew up. I just went weeks 9 through 17. Right. I eliminated the first half of the season, looked at the back half, and then when they throw him the ball, what this tells me when you're low usage but higher scoring, like he's starting to get into that blue range, is there's efficiency there, but when he's on the field and gets opportunity, he's making the most of his opportunity. I mean, per scale, he's probably outproducing anybody else on the Dallas Cowboys based on the type of volume that he got during the second half of that stretch. So I like Flournoy a lot. What do you make of this, Scott? What do you make of this right here? Let me select all weeks. Let's update the chart. Look at all weeks. Take a look at this. Look at where Lamb and Pickens are, Trinity score versus regression here for the season. Pickens on top, Lamb right here, similar usage range. And one of the things I do like to talk about, I want to put this on here, success versus man coverage, very important, all right? And to see when you just click this button and you look at what Pickens is doing versus man versus, like, these guys are absolutely dominant one-on-one. So you like to see that. And for a player like Flournoy, that's what I want to see as well. How does he do these lower end guys? How are they versus man coverage? Even if you don't know about defensive alignments, look at this, Scott. Look at where Flournoy is on the screen for the full season, and look at where Tolbert's at. Like, he's not good versus man. You have to be able to win against man coverage in the NFL to get points and score opportunity, because it's kind of easy I don't want to say easy, but look where Flournoy is versus zone. Yeah, it makes sense that Tolbert's a little better versus zone because you don't have to win with technique and route precision. Flournoy's in a good little spot here. He's decent versus man, and he's pretty good versus zone as well relative to everybody else on here. So I use some of that to just sort of break some ties or to take a look at a little bit of stuff. But back to this. KTC, Dallas Cowboys. Remember how Pickens and Lamb were stacked? I mean, look at how much Pickens is significantly valued, much lower than CeeDee Lamb versus the production that they're getting from a usage standpoint. There's Pickens and Lamb, 74, 45, whatever that equates to on KTC versus 6,100 for George Pickens.
Yeah, I think there's some fear about Pickens because of the situation, because he just doesn't have the track record that Lamb does. But if you're just looking at this and you trust the Trinity, and again, there is no interruption with Pickens, then bang for your buck. If you're getting, let's say you're getting 2 more years of prime Dak, Pickens, and Lamb together with no interruptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd prefer Pickens. Like, it's probably real close to 50-50 in terms of who's better for fantasy. The usage supports that both of them probably are top 15 or better options. but the value scale says that Lamb is a lot more expensive. So if you're really trying to find like best bang for your buck, elite receivers, Pickens is probably right up there with a guy that, very high odds to finish top 10 or better and doesn't cost you that.
Yeah.
So, and I think Ferguson, for all the reasons we're talking about the volatility with Pickens, and the same reason you'd be after Flournoy, is as long as the environment's good, 175, 2 PPR, right? Even 1.5, like you could do worse than Ferguson as a flex. Like that is what I talk about when I go through the roster construction series, and you just look blow for blow, spot for spot. If I'm flexing Jalen Waddle versus Jake Ferguson in a 175, like Jake Ferguson's just better. He's a better option when you're accounting for that premium. But the market, there's no sex appeal in Jake Ferguson, right?
No.
He's a big, slow, white tight end that's been around for 5 years, and the narrative would be he's carried by Dak, right? He's carried by Dallas. If he went to the Jets, he would suck, which to a degree is probably true. But that doesn't mean that all these hopium receivers that you're waiting for another year for that profile to come true.
Right.
When you just compare the two, you're like, wow, Jake Ferguson had more spike weeks, more opportunity, better usage. Like, you just have to be blind to that fact that he's not a sexy, flashy upset that's going to probably break out and win your league. But you know who else is probably not doing that? Jamison Williams.
Probably not.
You know what I mean?
Probably
like he is
not.
what he is. So I like buying tight ends in this range, maybe a little more aggressively than the market.
Look at the highs for George Pickens this year, just compared to CeeDee Lamb. I mean, you're talking 31. And that's without Lamb. With Lamb, 29-17. Another spike of 26-11 for Pickens. We got 29 versus 11. Right here, another 30-point week for George Pickens. And one thing that I wanted to look at is just when you get an environmental change, Scott, it's such a big boost, right? Let's just look at Pickens over the last couple of years. And this is going to look a little crazy. But you can compare him versus what he's done and how much better he's gotten every year. And like I said, it looks a little wild, but stick with me. The blue dots at the top, like the usage, he's always been able to earn opportunity. You could see Trinity Score versus points here for Pickens. And this past season when he got the environmental change, like just look at the blue dots and the highs in usage. That's usage. That's not points. The dots in the plot on the y-axis is truly the usage, and you can just see that this is a player who has always been able to command usage, but now that his situation is better, you don't see any of these blue lines down here where things were looking like with Pittsburgh with the orange, pink, and the lime green lines. It's like he made, what do they say in the stock market? Higher highs and higher lows. That's the situational change for Pickens here. And again, it looks like spaghetti on the screen, but you could break this down and go 25 versus 22, 25 versus 24 to really see how that environmental change has upped his fantasy production, yet he's always been able to command opportunity if given.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how I think coming into the year, people would have classified Pickens as the higher ADOT, lower target share, more volatile number 2 option. But I think the impressive thing is, yes, he's in a good environment, but am I crazy to say that he did more of the CeeDee Lamb stuff than CeeDee Lamb did some of the stuff you want to see out of an elite receiver? Maybe I'm not phrasing that right, but I was impressed that when he had his bad weeks, he still had the quote unquote like floor that no one ever thought he would have. He was classified as he's boom or bust. He's going to give you 30 or he's going to give you 8. But this says otherwise. Like he went blow for blow with CeeDee Lamb.
Well, here's
almost
why.
Equivalent usage.
Here's why. Elite receivers are both there's no that you have to be dominant versus man coverage. Only Pickens on the screen. Man coverage, 9.35 score, damn near 8 points per game out of man. And then when you get the soft looks on zone, are you dominant in that? There he is, another 10 points. And so you can't defend him. You zone him or you man him, and he's able to get open. And we'll look at other receivers where it might be high in one area and low in the other. It's a telltale sign on if you have a potential sort of elite outcome receiver. Let's just, for fun, let's look at his, based on what he did this year, what bucket and range is his projected outcome for next year. And it's going to be sky freaking high because of his usage this year. But just let's take a look at the historical, the range of outcome tool for George Pickens. Here we go. 7.45, 18 points per game. Efficiency adjusted Trinity score, damn near an 8. So he's in elite range. Low end outcome next year based on players who were used like Pickens in this current season. 16 points per game. You've got 22 Nuke Hopkins, 2024 A.J. Brown, 23 Brandon Ayuk. Medium range outcome, about 18 points per game. That's 23 Jefferson. And then some names in the top 10 percentile outcome. If this usage hold, the situation doesn't change. You're talking about 2020 Tay Adams, 24 Chase, 23 Lamb, 23 point per game season for George Pickens. I don't know if he's going to hit that top 10 percentile outcome. That is the elite of the elite. But if you just start at the medium range outcome, which is the 50th percentile, or even drop down to the bottom 10, if 8 points per game, 17 points per game on the low end, just based off of historical usage for George Pickens. So he's in great company. And this is why I don't know why so many people are afraid. Like, I don't know. He's already shown that he can command the usage, even on Pittsburgh. The issue with Pittsburgh is they didn't have a quarterback. If he goes to Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, I would trust that he would get the ball just the same. If he stays in Dallas, him and CeeDee Lamb might flip, but both of them are going to be wide receiver ones and probably pretty good with high-end spike outcome potential. It's a very good player in a great situation.
We'll move on to the Giants, but I'll just say this, Ray. Jerry, please work it out.
Yeah.
Just put it behind us so we can go into the offseason.
Yeah.
Feeling like everything we just said can be repeated for another year or 2 or 3. But
I'm with you.
That's the only thing that can hold him down is the distraction of a contract and the in and out, and that will affect his dynasty value. So if you want to bet on this could be, was it fair to say this might be one of your cheapest paths to an elite receiver?
Well,
because of what's going on in the market.
Let's just look real quick. Screw everybody. Let's just look real quick. Let's look in that range. What range was he in? 7.5?
Yep.
Here goes your range of 7. Let's get the 8s out of there. There's Pickens inside of there. Let me make it a little bigger. There's GP in there. Here's the band. What can you do inside of this range? This is KTC value. KTC versus Trinity. Is there anybody inside of his range that you would be comfortable trading down for, Scott, inside of this? And I've got tight ends on here as well. So you could take, you've got Nico a little below him in value, Olave, Wilson, Igbuka, AJ Brown, Waddle, Flowers, McLaurin, Christian Watson, Cortland Sutton. That's the band that he's in. Anybody you'd be like, I'm cool with moving Pickens for one of those guys plus.
I think I'm looking at this. The one guy that stands out that it's to be determined, but I could actually get on board with a Zay Flowers pivot off of Pickens.
Okay.
Now it's probably got to be at a pretty decent plus, but that's one of those that we'll talk about in a future show that it's pertinent because we're going to talk about the Giants next. And the Giants are probably going to inherit the Ravens environment per se. And I think a couple weeks ago when we talked on the weekly Trinity show, Zay Flowers was one of those guys that was frustrating. Like he's getting elite usage, but he just never seems to be above that line. It's frustrating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what if things flip? What if the Ravens bring in an OC that's a little more, I don't know, palatable, right?
Right.
And then this usage score, the same thing could be said about Flowers. He's had a good Trinity score his whole career. He's just always been below that line because it's a bad environment. So that's one where, could I turn, I don't know what the plus would have to be, but I don't think the Zay Flowers market is super inspiring either.
Well, we're damn near 2,000 points apart, and I don't know what that means as far as picks and value, but we're about 2,000 points apart.
Could I get a free shot in this year's rookie class? Like a 105, something like that, plus Zay Flowers for Pickens. If that was my goal, was to split the asset. I think for a lot of people, their goal doesn't always get met. Like they're saying, I want to do X, but then the best offer doesn't include a deal that looks like X. So then they have to decide, is it worth breaking up George Pickens for a lesser receiver plus? And a lot of times it's probably not when you're talking about a guy that's as good a value as
Let me give you the ultimate Trinity dice roll. Would you take it? Because if we're trusting this and we're saying that Terry McLaurin is used inside of the band, same band that if he were just average, he would have been scoring you about 15 points per game. If he were just average at what he did, I don't know what Washington's going to do, but they're probably going to get back Jaden Daniels. This is the lowest sector of this tier. Would you move your Pickens for a Terry McLaurin, betting on him? He wasn't at training camp. He didn't have JD5. Things are going to be okay. He's going to flip right above that line where he was at last year, and you move Pickens for McLaurin and a 27 first. Is that something that you would do?
If that's how I'm playing the receiver position, I think those types of deals, when you're getting that 27 first, yes. We talked in the Discord, like there are people that would be willing to take a moderately decent 27 first straight up for Pickens.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're getting another player you can play that has a case for having pretty good usage, then yeah, I like that form of the deal. You just got to be careful doing that.
I know. That's why I said
but I think you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. If I have a roster designed me already banking on Pickens being my elite outcome receiver, I'm less likely to do it. But if he was found money and I have him on a team sitting next to a Chase or a Puka or someone like that, I could be willing to do it, especially in leagues with like 11 or more starters where I'm trying to split the asset. That's probably a pretty decent bet.
There he is last year. Lower Trinity score, but only 3 points per game difference. He's 15 points last season, so still not that Pickens type outcome for McLaurin. But let's move on to the Giants. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there to see if you were willing to go down to the lowest common Trinity denominator there. But Giants, right? Giants.
Yep, we're going to the Giants. So the Giants definitely have a lot of changes. So we'll try to go over those. The biggest one being new head coach, new offense entirely. They do have Wandale Robinson that is a free agent. We'll talk about him. Pretty good Trinity for Wandale last year. And one thing that I'm impressed with Wandale, Ray, is not because I'm wearing a Kentucky sweatshirt here, but
oh yeah,
remember in 2024, people kind of clowned him. Like all he did was earn a bunch of cheap, shitty targets, right?
Yep.
And then he turned around and did the opposite the next year and didn't need nearly as much volume, but he still produced better than he did the year before. So I'm not saying that he's as good as he was last year, but the fact that he found two different ways to produce in back-to-back seasons tells me he's probably a pretty good receiver. Not saying he's elite, but like I'm going to just invoke a couple of these names, then we'll talk about the Giants as a whole. Is Wandale Robinson any worse than Jordan Addison?
No.
Is he any worse than Jalen Waddle?
No.
Like these names, these are sexy dynasty names, right? Man, they're still young. If the environment's good, people will buy these types. But Wandale's flown under the radar where the last couple of years, you could put him side by side with any team's true number 2 option. And he's the one you just want to cover because you just can't believe that he's as good as T. Higgins or Devontae Smith. But like, he's pretty good. But he's not in the same stratosphere as those guys when you think about their profiles. So he is a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this is a team that you've mocked them taking receivers, and that's been something that's been talked about. Like, there could be some muddy waters if they don't bring back Wandale. But other than that, I think the more important conversation is not necessarily about the players because, it's Wandale, it's Neighbors. Maybe they add another receiver. Theo Johnson's like a step or two down from where like the Jake Ferguson range is. I want to talk to you about the environment, though, because we like Jackson Dart. We like their weapons. But Ray, the Baltimore environment the last 3 years, especially last year, but even over the last couple of years, like this isn't a good environment. Mm-hmm. And this team's about to hire John Harbaugh and Todd Monken. And basically just run the Giants offense run the Ravens offense without Derrick Henry. But how do you feel? Like, what kind of environment is this going to be? Because the Giants were an average environment. They weren't great, but they weren't terrible. But then I'm sitting here, I'm staring at, from a passing perspective, the Ravens wasn't the team you wanted to have pieces from.
No.
Is that a Lamar thing? Is that a Monken Harbaugh thing? Is it a blend of either? And then what is Jackson Dart? I think that's the importance of this conversation in figuring out what to do with the Giants.
It is the great unknown. You look at Wandale last year, 28% target share. That's pretty damn good. I mean, that I could tell you without even looking, that's more than Devontae Smith, more than Jordan Addison, probably more than Jalen Waddle. I'm going to assume he had a higher percent of targets than Waddle. It was very consolidated here. And then if we start to filter by weeks from when Malik Neighbors was out, it probably condenses down even more. I'm just going to take this out because I think it shows the power of how good Robinson was down the stretch. The environment, I mean, there's Wandale. That 35% target share from week 9 to week 17. 35%, Scott. That is elite usage, not wide receiver 1 usage. If you're getting targeted at that clip, and during that time, nobody else on the team, the next closest wide receiver on the Giants was Darius Slayton with 14.8% target share. And then the second up on the team was the tight end Theo Johnson, whose bucket and allotment of usage doesn't conflate with that of the receiver. It was all Wandale Robinson sort of carrying the passing attack. And even then, I bet you if we just looked at the score chart, that 8.2 and 14 points was either right at the line or below it. Like, I don't even know if it would have been above with that type of usage, but I don't know what you asked me, but I want to look at his KTC value. He's probably pretty damn good.
So week 4 is when Malik Neighbors got injured. And if you just look at it from week 5 to 17.
All right, let's go 5 to 17.
I know you went 9 to 17, but this shows like in almost a damn whole season, because we're talking 12 weeks.
Wow.
He put up a 31% target share.
Yeah.
And he may have his flaws in terms of like his yak wasn't super high for his usage, but like you tell most people a 31% target share, you're like, that's probably a good player. That's probably a good receiver. So there's no guarantee that a lot of other sexy wide receiver 2s that if their main guy goes out, that they're getting a 31% target share.
Yeah.
And we come back to, usage is earned, right? You don't just get handed this because there's nobody else. So he's one of the more fascinating free agents to me because I do think people will kind of poo-poo the fact if he is re-signed, they will still say, oh, whatever receiver. Let's say, hypothetically, they sign Wandale. The word is he wants the deal similar to Jacoby Myers, which I think is a fair deal based on this market, like a 3 for $60 or something like that. That's probably what it's going to take to keep him. But let me just pose you this. Let's say let's say Wandale gets signed by the Giants, okay? And then they draft a receiver in that, I mean, they're picking in the top 10. So if they draft a receiver there, then fine. But let's just say they draft one of the top 3 receivers off the board. That's where it gets really dicey. Because here's the mistake people will make. Wandale is dead.
Correct.
Whereas I might look at it as, okay, Wandale is clearly going to get impacted. But are you expecting Jordan Tyson to come in and just nuke Wandale Robinson based on what he did?
No.
So it really then kind of pivots to like, okay, well, what is Malik Neighbors' health? And if they had a high-end receiver here, I'm curious what that does, because clearly the least valuable of the 3 will be Wandale Robinson. But this usage, you don't just put this back in the can. You know what I mean? Like if they keep him, if they pay him, this becomes a very unique situation where you're going to probably have 3 top 30-ish receivers with an environment where if I told you of anything close to Baltimore, they can barely support 1. That's where it gets really dicey. I know I'm going off in the weeds.
Where's Waldo? This is Trinity versus KTC. Where's Waldo at on here? Where's Wandale's production or usage, not production, usage versus value? Do you see him on there? I found him.
I see him, but you're looking in the bottom right-hand quadrant of a guy that gets great usage but has low value because he is not He's just, for some reason, he's not a sexy name that people knew was going to be good from the day one. And so, he lives in that. He lives in that. Okay. Christian Watson's also in that range. You mentioned Terry McLaurin. He's in that lane. So you're either old, but you're good, or you're just not as sexy. Because the funny thing is, like, Wandale's not even old. You know what I mean? He's a very unique profile because he's almost he's almost forgotten in terms of like being a good asset, yet here we are. So yeah, he's right down there and right by McLaurin, honestly, a little to the left of McLaurin.
There's McLaurin. You got Zay Flowers there, interestingly enough, and Wandale outscored him, but Flowers, that's a buy you can make. Like I don't know what 3,500 is, but there are pivots all up and down. Like, look at this. Look at where Worthy is. Would you move Xavier Worthy right now, straight up for Wandale Robinson?
I would, but the fact that that's even a thought, I mean, you asked me and I didn't immediately say yes. It took me 5 seconds to arrive at the answer. I mean, that defines Wandale Robinson's value right there.
Let me ask you this.
People just hear those two names and they just think on different levels, even though nothing in the data suggests.
Let's go higher. Let's go higher, Scott. Would you move Romo Dunze for Wandale Robinson in a plus based on, and we haven't talked about we talked about the North last week, and look at where his value is compared to Wandale Robinson. If you get a plus on top of Wandale for Odunze, you've got, BTJ is still valued much higher. Ricky Pearsall, higher value. Addison, you touched on him. Waddle, Flowers. Maybe once you get to the Wilson, Igbuka range, you're in a different kind of territory, but there are pivots to be made. And again, Wandale is not below the line because he's performing bad. He's high usage, but low value. So it's really fun to look around at names on here and see who people value versus what they're actually doing in fantasy. And right here is a great example. People, I know they're lower back, but damn near, it's not far off from where Jalen Noel and Isaac Tesla are, but look how far back they are as far as usage on their team. So what else I do want to look at the range because everybody's going to know what to do with Malik Neighbors. If he's on the field and playing, you're playing him. Like there's no question. Let's just look at the range of outcome based on the usage for Wandale and where his top and bottom 10 percentiles live and where the 50% range is, and then your thoughts here. Talk about it, Scott, for the people who aren't watching and they're listening to this live. What do we see?
I mean, it literally looks very similar to what we talked about last week with J-Mo and Luther Burden and Christian Watson. Like, he's right in that range. He's probably a wide receiver 2-3. He's hopefully in your flex, but like this just supports that he's no different than those guys. He just took a different path to get here. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing in this episode that we've talked about with Wandale that doesn't make you say, I want to go get more Wandale.
Yep.
So you're looking for those signals where, okay, maybe the Giants aren't sure if they want to pay him, or the Giants draft a receiver and then people get scared and they go, oh, he's not going to be that good, but the usage suggests otherwise. And it's not even that his usage suggests otherwise. His usage was so good last year that even if it regresses, it's still usable.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's not like he's going to fade back to where he's getting buried and he's unstartable.
He should not.
And that's where the environment comes in. Like, I'll ask you this, then we'll move on. How many receivers in this rookie class over the first 2 years of their career? So I'm not talking ADV, excitement of how great this prospect is. How many receivers in this class over the next 2 years would you bet outproduce Wandale Robinson?
Maybe one.
I was gonna say I'll hedge my bets on 2 to 3. That includes like all the big three, and then we're not always right with who those big three are. But
I think the idea of a 90 reception, 1,000-yard season is there. You have to be either very good to get that, Scott. You are the Tedero McMillan. You are the primary, and even then, I don't think he had 90 receptions. And I think that is a much larger threshold to get to for a rookie than people want to give it credit for, right?
Agreed.
Like, did Igbuka hit 1,000 after how he played? Like, I don't even think he got to 1,000 this year, Emeka Igbuka. So over the next 2 years, maybe two, one or two. I think that's a very tall task to get to.
Well, I'm not saying that you don't take more than one or two receivers over.
Yes,
Wandale,
I'm not saying that.
But that's what we want to do with these team breakdowns and these player breakdowns is be thinking about, okay, I'm sitting on the 108. The mocks that we've done, that's either you're taking a flyer on a quarterback or you pray there's an RB2, or it's like I'm drafting KC Concepcion or Denzel Boston and I'm hoping that they're good. And I think most people would go, I would take that 108 pick over Wandale Robinson. Nobody has to pay a first or wants to pay a first for him. But when you start going through that conversation, if you look at that pick where you're drafting KC Concepcion and you go, man, I really hope he becomes a good flex receiver that I can start every week, there's opportunities to take advantage of the market and take advantage of the time of year. If you just don't want to make those picks, like this is the kind of player you go after, and someone will also kick you a 27-second and a running back in the trade or something like that. Like you can take advantage of it, especially if you've arrived at the fact that, I've seen it in the Discord. Oh, man, I'm sitting on the 110, Ray. Probably best player available I'm going to get's a receiver. Who should I take there? Zachariah Branch or Denzel Boston or KC Concepcion? And keep in mind, if any of those lands in a great spot, they're not at that 110. You're probably picking more of like the ass end of the later first-round receivers. You know what I mean? Like it's if you've already looked at that pick and said, I'm probably going to have to do X with it, go see if you can go to the market. And this is one of the premier players I think I'd be targeting.
All right. What team? We got two left. We got the Commanders and the Eagles.
Let's go Commanders because I think, oh man, when you just refresh the Commanders for the season, it's like, yikes. But anyway, I think we go to the Commanders because even though they fired or there was a mutual firing or parting ways with Kingsbury.
Is this good night? Is it one? Do I have all the? Yeah, that's 1 through. This is what it looks like.
Not fun, is it?
Jeez, Louise. Wow. Deebo Samuel. Let's go, Deebo. Yes. Elite.
Well, I think we can kind of. This is the team, Ray, that I am the most concerned about. This is the team I'm the most concerned about because their environment wasn't great.
Ugh.
But there's two things at play. One, if you actually look at their environment when they had Jaden Daniels and when they didn't, it wasn't different. So you can't just point to, oh man, they didn't have Jaden, it's why their offense tanked. Like the data says otherwise. And the second thing is they didn't really change anything. They promoted their passing game coordinator to their OC. And they kept the same coach. And so, like, I don't think they're not fundamentally changing what they're doing. They're hoping that they get 2024 Jaden Daniels and some health back and they can add some talent. But I'm concerned about this environment. They do have Zach Ertz, who's probably gone. He's a free agent. He also tore his ACL, so he's done. Deebo Samuel's a free agent as well. I don't know if they bring him back. I don't think they should, but
hey, man, Deebo went 7, and this is through 17 games, so it doesn't include week 18, but through 17, 70 and 700 and 5 TDs for Deebo, 23%. I'm not saying it was great, but 11.
I'm not saying he's bad.
Yeah.
I think that they can attack. I think they could attack receiver a little differently.
Yes, they can. Yes.
If I'm them, I would rather go after. I'd rather have Wandale Robinson if they could get him than Deebo Samuel. And you know what I mean? And he probably costs a similar amount. So really it's just Terry McLaurin. Everything else is a blank canvas. It's Terry McLaurin and a bunch of guys. I guess here's my first question. If you go back to the main Commanders screen, just to knock this out, in your opinion, other than just telling yourself a hopium story, assuming Deebo leaves and Zach Ertz is gone, is there any current Commander not named McLaurin that you have any hope for? Or is it just they're on your team and you have to find a story?
Zero. So
going into the season. Treylon Burks, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, Ben Sinnott. Don't care about any of those?
Zero. I don't even. Zero.
Okay.
Zero. The usage doesn't warrant it. And when they got opportunity over, and this is, I guess we could segment down a season. None of them are even close to the line. I guess Luke McCaffrey, but that's year 2, and he can't eclipse 5 points per game. There's nobody. There's nobody. It's Terry McLaurin. Zach Ertz is out. Debo's probably gone. It's Terry McLaurin. And if Debo's back, sure. I'll take him as a throw-in.
So analyzing the environment, their environment was a little better in 24 than it was in 25. Way better, actually.
Yeah, it should be a lot better.
You would agree this is probably a spot that you are moderately interested in if they do sign a Romeo Dobbs or they do draft a receiver or draft a tight end.
Yes. Yes,
like
because I think
this is one of those where, like, they sign Isaiah Likely. This will be one where you're excited about whoever they bring in. Yeah, right?
if Likely can get Ertz's opportunity, if whatever receiver that's younger, that's more fresh, that's a little more juice, can replicate the usage of Debo with better quarter. This is Debo for the whole, not just with JD5. It's with Mariota. It's with Josh Johnson. It's with half of a Jaden Daniels. I could reasonably, I'd like to see where Debo's at. Let's just go take a look and it's just that usage for Debo. Let's just look at what that would put him in next year. You're looking at a probably 11 to 14 point per game player based off of that type usage. I'm interested in that, Scott, because there may be a spike week in there. I'm not getting an absolute zero at that spot. So, yes, I would be interested if they bring somebody else in, draft or free agency.
I do think, just to comment on the environment, McLaurin's usage is very strong. So regardless of whether they draft a guy and or sign a guy or both, because they're probably going to have to bring in 2 guys, whether that's a tight end and a receiver or a receiver and a receiver in the draft. Like, they're going to need multiple pieces here. I'm concerned that if they start bringing in multiple pieces, that we should be a little tempered on the 2, the 3, the 4, et cetera, in this environment specifically. So I'm interested, but I'll just have to see who the players are, and I'll have to see what capital they were used on, what their contracts were. But there's room for one more. But I think it's when you start getting into more than that I'll start to worry.
Let's do this moving forward. In the vein of looking and chasing elite type outcomes, is this the type of environment where you would bet on one elite outcome finish? Is this the type of environment?
Not as it was in 2025, no.
Okay, I agree. So then if that's the case, if you're not getting one elite outcome player, that means you there's the chance that you get one moderately high-end range player or a good one, and then the secondary guy probably is going to be within a range of, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, Scott, but somebody that I'm not fighting to get. They land in a range where I'll take the lowest common denominator that will probably get me, what did Debo have? 12 points per game. I can go find that, right? I can find that. So
yes,
I guess.
Well, and look at Terry in 24. If you pull up McLaurin in 24,
what was it, 6.8?
6.8. So his usage was worse, but his production was better. And so that kind of speaks to an environment. Maybe we know Terry McLaurin's a good player. I wouldn't call him elite, but he's good.
Yeah, he's a good player.
24, the environment kind of helped prop him up a little bit based on his usage. Whereas last year he got more usage and worse production. So it's probably somewhere in the middle, but that would still put McLaurin as clearly an option that'd be hard for a free agent or a rookie to topple.
Well, and just for optional completeness here, let's look at McLaurin. It was Ertz at 5'8". Yeah, even last year. I mean, Debo wasn't there, but it was like a one-man show environment, even last year in 2024. It was a one-man show for a elite-ish range outcome season. All right, Philadelphia.
Last team, the all-controversial Philadelphia.
Let's pull them up, baby. Let's pull them up.
With, at the time of this, we do not know who their offensive coordinator is. So that could impact thoughts on the Eagles. But I think we can say this about the Eagles because it's been this way for 5 years. the concentration is what it is. There isn't a relevant wide receiver 3.
Nope.
They don't use a second tight end.
Nope.
Now, Dallas Goedert's a free agent, so if they lose him, then it could change a little bit. But, like, I'm not worried about figuring out who the 3 is or if the 4 or the 5 or the 6 are going to be Nats. Like, that's something I'm willing to bet just continues unless they totally change personnel. Like, if they trade A.J. Brown and then Dallas Goedert walks, then, okay, maybe I could see a little more disruption in terms of the concentration, because you're probably not replacing A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert in free agency or the draft day one. But aside from that, I mean, Jahan Dotson, a free agent, so you're technically your wide receiver 3 goes away. He's the only other player even on the freaking screen.
Yeah.
And then their backup tight end, I believe Grant Calcaterra, is a free agent. So, like, they don't really lose anything of note. My guess is they probably just run it back with these 3. Now it depends on what's the environment look like. What's the offense look like? We don't know. We don't know the coordinator yet.
I want to take a look at Devontae Smith, because at the start of the season, people were very excited. This is the one. Like, this guy is crushing it. And then I'm almost certain, Scott, and let's start here, 24, 23. Let's go Devontae Smith. I'm almost certain that his end-of-season usage score is very similar to what it's been the past couple of years for Devontae Smith, for Smitty. That's week to week. That's week to week. Let's look at score thing 2024 for Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith in 2024, his finish. Oh, I have to hit update. Update that. Smitty was a 6.79. This year, he was a 7.01. 15 points per game this year, 12 points per game last year for Devontae Smith. 2023, let's update the chart. 2023. It's
almost the same every year. 6.77. Just like,
so we look at 25 and what he did this year, and then we're going to segment this out, Scott, because the first, what was it? First, like 8 weeks, people were saying he was the guy. Let's look at the first 8 weeks of the season for Devontae Smith this year. I mean, look at that, dude. 7.33, 14 points per game. He was way up there as far as the squad. And then where did he finish at? Let's go the back half of the season for Smith. And the thing that I'm making here, or the point that I'm trying to make, is when it was all said and done, he just kind of leveled out, Scott. 6.88. This is his usage. 6.88. Freaking, 9 points per game the back half of the season. So as good as he started, when it was all said and done, his usage just kind of played out exactly where he's been the last 3 years. In between a 6.8 and a 7.0. And the point per game range for Smitty the last probably 3-4 years, 12 to about 15 points per game every season for Smith. That is, at this point, that is probably who he is, right? Like, there's no, there's moments in the season where he can have a spike game or two, but by and large, A.J. Brown leaves. Do you expect Smith to just jump up into the 8s and be a 20 point per game wide receiver if A.J. Brown's out of the building?
No, I mean, he probably gets a small tick up, but most likely they fill those roles of a departed Brown or Goedert with just a different personnel. You know what I mean? They don't just replace those two guys. Maybe Goddard's easier to replace than Brown. But I think the narrative, I mean, if we get the breaking news that they have traded A.J. Brown, Ray, what is it? The
Smitty to the moon.
Smitty rocket ships, right? It's just like, oh my gosh, he's about to blow up. And he probably gets a little better, right? Like, but you and I would probably say we would use that opportunity to sell Smitty because his market would be up 10%, and people expect his production's going to go up 30%. And I'm going, maybe it goes up 5%.
Right.
Not enough to move the needle or make a difference how I'm constructing my roster, but I bet you if that happened, you'd be able to flip Smitty for 27 first, right? You can't do that today. You could do it there, but what you're articulating is that even if that happened, his range of outcome doesn't change that much. It doesn't move the knee. It doesn't get me to another tier of wide receiver production.
No, it does not. And I'll just say, despite how bad the season was for A.J. Brown, when you look at their usage versus man coverage, like he dominates everybody on Philadelphia. And when you think about how A.J. Brown plays, he's big, he's still fast, needs to catch the damn ball. But this right here is why Smith is not as elite. It is versus man. That's not where he lives and thrives. And then when you look at them versus zone, there goes your cluster of three. There it is. You're good versus zone, and then A.J. Brown is the eliter option because he's also one of the only wide receivers on Philadelphia who is getting great usage and opportunity versus man coverage and also winning versus man coverage. So that's how you sort of use the man zone qualifiers just to reinforce the stuff that you're seeing. But yeah, there you go. There's Philadelphia. There's Philly.
Well, and I'll just say this. I actually think Dallas Goedert's a pretty good buy because the Trinity shows he's a good tight end. And there's a 50-50 shot that if he's not on Philly, he actually is in a better environment. You know what I mean? Like, you take what his usage is in Philly and put that on the Commanders, and you're like, he actually came out ahead of that situation. So he's one of those ones that fits in that. If you're in a 175 or a 2 PPR, he fits in it's enough premium to where if I have to start him in my flex, I'm actually probably getting a better bang for your buck in terms of what he's going to cost me than buying the similar receivers that are in this range that we're talking about. You know, like in a 175, Dallas Goedert's probably as good as Devontae Smith in terms of what they're going to give you production-wise. You know what I mean? In terms of, 13 to 16 points per game or whatever it would be if they have a good season. One's not going to cost that, though, because he's a 30-year-old tight end that people think is hitting free agency, and the Eagles was a good spot for him. Whereas Smitty is like, anything happens to Brown or Goedert, it's Smitty. I want Smitty. He's better. So he's a sneaky buy for me. If you're looking for those flexes at tight end, he's one of those guys that I would want.
13th best Trinity score, Dallas Goedert right here. 19% target share. Of all the tight ends ahead of him, only two of them had more red zone targets. Trey McBride and and Tyler Warren. Those are the only ones who had more red zone targets than him. Although there was a 16 in there. I think Bowers as well. But yeah, this is and you could filter this down if you just want to look at tight ends or wide receivers on the report to see what they did. You could do that as well. So I agree with you, Scott. And the historical tab puts him right at about a 13 point per game high-end outcome next year, which, again, that's in just regular PPR format. So you adjust that for 175 or 2.0, and you get a tight end inside of a wide receiver 3 band as far as usage that is very, very bullish. Very bullish. Right?
Yeah, that's it. That's a great analysis with the receivers because I think people just have blind spots to those tight ends, The Jake Fergs, the Goederts, they're not fun. They're not sexy. People don't see a ceiling, and then you look up and you're like, damn, Jawan Johnson just had 16 points per game in this 175 format. Who saw that coming? But that's what you use the Trinity for.
I mean, if you're in that band, and we're just gonna go tight ends above a Trinity score of 5, because the Trinity score is really based off of wide receiver usage, but we just throw the tight ends in there. So the higher up the tight ends are on this chart, it's like where McBride is ridiculous to be that far as usage and efficiency. But here's Goedert right here. I mean, that's a nice band to be in. And then let's do this, Scott, for optional completeness. Let's go to KTC. Let's filter by tight ends. What was the range? 5 for the score. Let's put the labels on and let's just take a look. Where are you at, Dallas Goedert? Where's he at? I don't even... Where's he? There he is. There he is. Down here, buried. There's Goedert right there, Scott. Towards the lower end. The only tight ends lower. I think that's Hunter Henry back there. You've got Dalton Schultz, Kelsey, of course, Ertz, Jawan. I mean, he's down here with the retirees as far as his KTC value.
Yeah, I mean, and you can use this, just simply this filter, right? Pick a Trinity score over 5 and look at only tight ends and just go from there. And you can easily spot some of the guys that you might be interested in buying. I mean, it's the same names we talk about all the time. Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz, Mark Andrews, like
Hunter Henry's back there. There's Hunter Henry's is tucked back there. He's back. There he is, Hunter Henry. 10 and a half points per game.
Unsexy as they are, this is a blind spot in Dynasty. These types of tight ends are not valued like Harold Fannin, like Sam Laporta. People will give you 5 times as much for Harold Fannin as they would for Mark Andrews or Dalton Schultz. And that's fine. I don't disagree that their career trajectories are different, right? But you're looking at the Trinity, right? Like, we're not talking about the Browns, but look at Harold Fannin, right? Great rookie year, right?
Yes.
Good prospect.
Absolutely.
Don't we take for granted how hard it is to go from where Harold Fannin is to where Brock Bowers and Trey McBride is? And that's what people expect. That's the only place Harold Fannin can go, is he either goes in that range or he continues to just be good in the range that he's in. And then when he's 5 years into his career, he'll start to fade into the Goddard and Schultz range because he's getting old. Like that's the trajectory. So I like Fannin. And there's probably a world where one of those guys from that range, Loveland, even Pitts, because he's still young, Fannin, like they hit a year or two where they creep up close to the McBride and Bowers range. But the majority of them just kind of stay where they are. And doesn't it make sense that as you get to be 29, 30 years old, that you drop a little bit versus when you're 23, 24?
Yes.
So that's the key. I mean, this is a blind spot in Dynasty where I think everybody's just searching for the next McBride, and they'll tell you why it's Loveland or why it's Fannin or why Kraft is the next Kittle. And it's just like, it's so hard to go from the range where Fannin, Pitts, Warren is to just they're the best. I mean, McBride and Bowers, you could interchange them with Puka, Jamar Chase, JSN, and that they are basically that, but they don't play receiver. So it's just a big difference.
Well, and let's tie a bow on this. What do you notice? Juwan Johnson down 10 points. Goddard got you 12 points per game last year. That is, Brenton Strange 9, Gadsden 9, Laporta 11, Fannin 11, Pitts 12, Kittle 15, Warren 11. Like the price you're paying for this type of output, it's so clearly and obviously a value right here. And as you said, a blind spot with the tight end position, and just, we're not talking about them, but look at this. 2 Miami tight ends inside of the 5 range.
I know.
I wonder if this were just one tight end, Scott, if we could combine those guys into one player, what that might do for now Oronde Gadsden with Mike McDaniel here. Another show for another day, but the 2 Miami tight ends, both printed inside that 5 range. And of course they're not valued, but I love using this.
Both free agents. I said it on one of my shows that if McDaniel stays in Miami, which obviously he didn't, like, believe it or not, that the tight end combo they had between Waller and Dulcich, I like both, and it was probably one of the better parts of their offense.
Yeah. I'm showing people what you can do, Scott, here. And if you want to link your leagues up, you can do that, Scott. Let's see. I'm just going to pick one for the people out here to see. This is a league right here, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I finished second in this league. Got dog walked in the fantasy playoffs, Scott. But you could sync your league and see what type of usage in Trinity you have on your squad. So here's one of my leagues, and you can go through the report, KTC, all of that stuff. But in this league, there's the teams. It shows 100% roster because it's that league. But use this, like, link up your tool. You could look at all this stuff, link up your leagues, MFL or Sleeper. Of course, that's what I'm using right here. But you can do this and see what they do versus man and zone. Go to the report with your synced league and all that other good stuff. So just kind of showing you some different things that you can do as well.
Yeah, for sure. This was a good episode. I think this is a preview of what we're going to get with the next couple, because I'm not sure we have all the coach and OC openings filled in the next week or two. So by the time we get towards the end of the series, we'll have everything down pat. But these are the things to think about. Like, there's nothing really to do right now with your teams other than to kind of look through your rosters and really start thinking about players the way that we talked about them today. Don't think about them as profiles or, what do we call it? Hopium, ADV. Like, really dive into their usage and their situations and be realistic with what you can go do with certain players on the markets. So good luck.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Scott, get us out of here, baby. Get us out of here, baby.
Yeah, I mean, continue to do what we're talking about. Go through, run your own teams. I mean, Ray and I are open to, I mean, I get DMs at least once a week of somebody that's like, hey, I've been playing with this or I've been playing with that. And, you care if I take a run at, trying to come up with this, and like, yeah, go for it. Like, you never know what the next thing will be that you're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. So
100%.
I encourage everybody to sign up, ddfantasyfootball.com, get in the Discord, sync your teams, start playing with it and figure out, what's the angle that you can work using this tool. And we'll be around in the community with more content.
Absolutely. Much love. We appreciate you guys. Like the video, hit the thumbs up button, jump in the community. Like, this is the time. This is the time. Get in. Scott's in there. I'm in there. And more importantly, there are 40 other people in the live voice chat in our private community that are doing the same stuff and talking about this all day, every day. Patreon.com/allgas if you just want to get in the community. But if you want to use the tools, your best bang for your buck is through the website, ddfantasyfootball.com. So until next week, for Scott, for Ray, myself, catch him on X at CharlesChillFFB. Stay tapped into all the content that he does right here on the DDFFB channel, and then get at your boy Ray over on my channel, Ray GQ, and then the Wake Up with Ray and Jay feed every Tuesday and Thursday. Much love. We'll see y'all next week. We out. Peace.